It's Talking Pints. The GB News Tavern is open, and I'm joined by celebrity lawyer Nick Freeman, who's got a cup of tea. But welcome,
cheers,
Nick,
Good health.
to Talking Pints. Now, we're going to have a chat about this amazing reputation you've got as a lawyer for picking holes in the opposition arguments, for becoming Mr. Loophole, which is, it's quite a claim to fame, and your big celebrity customers that you've had over the years, some amazing, very famous cases. But as somebody who's very, very good at reading the law and getting customers out of clients out of very, very difficult situations, what I'm going to do right now, because the Tory party are dithering.
Yep.
They're messing around.
They are.
So I'm going to give Boris, because a lot of people out there still like Boris. Let's give you one last chance. You're now in charge of Boris Johnson's defence.
As his legal advisor.
As his legal advisor,
Okay.
We've got the Met
Just as
Police.
his legal advisor.
Just as his legal
Okay.
advisor. What would you advise the Prime Minister? A really easy question to start.
No, it is a very easy question for this reason. Boris, relax. You're presumed innocent. These parties took place, if I'm correct, over 6 months ago. Therefore, the prosecution is out of time and they can't prosecute you for it. So just from a purely criminal perspective, I think you're okay.
That was the point Shabnam Chowdhury was making.
Was it?
When she was on earlier on, former Met.
So I mean,
out of time.
From a legal perspective, that's why I clarified.
Yes.
From a legal perspective, I think he's okay.
Yes.
From a political perspective, I mean, look, he's always got the populist vote. People love him because of his character, his massive personality. But I do believe that when you lose your integrity, the trust, that foundation has just broken down. I think you've got serious problems. And we've had repeated examples of this. And I think the public are fed up. And I don't think he's doing the Tory party any good, I'm afraid. He has become a distraction. So, for example, there's a new highway code coming in on Saturday, 29th of this month.
Yeah.
The public know nothing. A third of the public didn't know anything about it. And it's just now, what are we talking about? All the news broadcasts are all about Boris and his parties. So it's a distraction, and we're not concentrating. We've got huge problems in this country, and that's why he was elected, to sort out this mess. And he's distracted with, did he have a drinks party, didn't he? He's not going to be prosecuted for it. What's the Sue Gray report going to say? So that's his political career. He's a distraction. In my view, he needs to stand aside. I think he will. I think it's only a question of time. And we need, unfortunately, I say unfortunately, we need somebody else who can carry forward and do what the Tory voter wants. We want someone with integrity, someone who's got some vision and move the country forward in the sort of direction that he was elected to do. And he's lost Dominic Cummings, he's lost his way. Mr. Cummings has become very vindictive, and
nasty.
It's nasty, it's unpleasant. He doesn't do himself any favours. But the Tory party needs to regroup, regather, move forward. They were elected by a huge majority, as you know. So they need to just get on with the job. Otherwise, they're going to forfeit this opportunity.
Said with some passion, Nick. Said with some passion.
I'm afraid I'm passionate about most things.
Yeah, no, I can tell.
Including what I do.
Now, it's very interesting. You mentioned the highway code there. Yeah. And in fact, I had a debate last night on this. And, I had a pro-cyclist and a pro-motorist, and I'm really worried that what's been brought in is sort of London thinking and doesn't apply to much of the rest of the country. And I can see people turning left at junctions and all sorts of problems and accidents, and some will know what the code is, some won't. But it's in this sphere of motoring that you've become really incredibly well known. Yeah. Well, and I mean, the big cases, the Beckham case. I mean, talk us through the Beckham case.
Okay. Well, the first Beckham case, the first one was in 1999. He was going too fast in his Ferrari, and there's a very rare defence. It's called a duress.
Here is a very young Beckham here. You can see.
Wow. Well, he was just sort of, he was just getting back in the public eye, because you remember he got sent off in the World Cup.
I know.
He was just sort of regaining popularity, becoming a star again. In any case, to cut a long story short, he was driving too fast in his Ferrari down the A34, and I got the call to ask to defend him. I went to see him at the ground. Obviously, it's very exciting, because I just set up on my own. It was that's why I remember the date, January the 1st, 1999. And he said, look, I was petrified, because this Paps was trying to Paps me, and he was so close to me, he was driving so dangerously. I had to put some space between us, otherwise there was going to be an accident with serious consequences. So I argued duress of circumstance, necessity, which is a very rare defence.
And you did that believing him to be right.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, just to put into perspective, when he went through the camera, he dialed 3 999 calls within 90 seconds of the incident.
Okay.
And as I said to the judge on appeal, I said either he had an amazing foresight, forensic knowledge of the law, or actually what he was saying was completely true. And it was quite a compelling argument.
Interesting.
So yes, he was chased by the Paps, and if someone drives so dangerously, it makes sense, doesn't it? You think, oh my God, this guy's going to kill me. He's going to cause a crash. What do? If you've got the power in a Ferrari to leave a small car, you put your foot down, and that's what he did.
Alex Ferguson was another one where there were interesting circumstances.
Sir Alex,
yeah,
he'd had a stomach problem, and he thought he was cured. And the interesting thing about that was, had he not thought he was cured, he wouldn't have been able to avail himself of that defence. And so he'd been to the training ground, thought he was better. There was medical evidence to support it. On his way back, and he had this terrible wave within his stomach. And as I said to the court, he was confronted with two options, and one was particularly palatable. So he took the choice to drive quickly on the hard shoulder and get to a bathroom. There were no exhibits produced.
You see, Nick, both of those stories are good, because both of those stories I can see that actually that you're defending people who had justifiable reason to behave
using the
in the
law.
way you did.
It's knowing the law and using it, digging deep.
But you're kind of portrayed, and you have been portrayed over the years in the newspapers as somehow what Nick Freeman does is a bit sneaky. He gets people off who behave really, really badly. But would you, or he finds these loopholes? I mean, the Clarkson case was a loophole in the law.
Well, no, it was just law. The prosecution case was in such a mess that I spoke to the barrister who was prosecuting, and I said, look, I'm very happy to tell you what's wrong. I think there were 5 or 6 points that were wrong in his case. And I said, I'm happy to tell you if you're sensible about it. In other words, if you don't ask for an adjournment to try and rectify it. He said, I'm not going to do that. So I told him, he said, you're absolutely right, I'm going to knock it on the head. That's what happens. So, I don't get him off. What I do is I advise my client what to do. I then go and argue. The Crown argue the other side, and someone else will decide whether there's merit in my argument. It's not my decision whether he's guilty.
But kind of the press would... And
they like to vilify them.
Well, they like to sort of show you as that you're on the side of the bad guys.
Well, because, look, we have a presumption of innocence, don't we? And even if you...
We should have.
Well, we do. It exists in law, but we forget it. We assume, we read a sensational article in the paper, and you think, that's disgusting. How did he do that? It's all, particularly with sex cases, we have reputations, traduce, we hear the allegation, the no charges, a lifetime ruined. I mean, I dealt with one soap star, and he was charged with a sexual assault. The jury were out for 7 minutes. It took them about 4 minutes to get backwards and forwards to the retiring room. She was obviously lying. That was the end of his career. I'm not going to mention the name, but that was the end of his career. He'd done nothing wrong. An opportunist person. And I said to him, you need to go after him, make a complaint for perjury, attempting to pervert the court. He said, it's destroyed my life. I've got nothing left in the tank. And he let it go. So, one of the things I asked for, and I think we should have, is we need to go back to the days where there is actually anonymity for all people who are accused of sex offences, but at the same time, give a judge a discretion. So if the prosecution feel they're dealing with a Savile or something as odious as that, they make an application to the trial judge and say, look, we think we need to lift that veil of anonymity and people will come forward. So the judge has a discretion and it's exercised judiciously, and then we have fair play. But why? How many lives do we have destroyed? And, sex crimes are horrendous, but at the same time, we don't want to be falsely accusing people who are innocent because we're destroying their lives.
Their lives are ruined too.
Who's protecting them?
Yeah.
Because the media aren't, and then you get a small... I defended a headmaster, and he was accused of serious sex crime, rape. And we were very thorough in the investigation. It was basically he says, she says, and we found a porter who remembers going past the room, and there was awful sensational headlines about this particular case because he was a headmaster. And the porter, we did some research, and he said, I walked past that room. The rape was supposed to have happened at midnight. He walked past that room at about 2:30 in the morning, and he heard a woman say, come on, baby, give it me, baby, come on, baby. Well, we got that, we served it. There was a trial before the trial. The case was thrown out. That was the end of his life. It sticks. So these sex offences are unique. They have a terrible stigma.
Very interesting.
And people need to be protected.
Very interesting. And Nick, one of the things that we've had, I suppose we could argue from Magna Carta onwards, has been this concept that you're judged by your peers. In most cases, there is a jury.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I was pretty shocked by what the criminal damage charges jury decided over the Colston case, the Edward
Yeah.
Colston statue in
Yeah.
Bristol. I was really surprised.
Yeah. I think there was a lot of fear involved in that, and I
Go on.
honestly believe that they were worried about repercussions if they returned a guilty verdict.
Because they lived in Bristol.
I think so. Yeah, I think that local people, so much media attention, that the people who pulled that down obviously they're activists, aren't they? Let's say that they accept they're activists, and I think the jury were under pressure. I think we can say they were under pressure to return a verdict.
I have to say,
and that's a personal view.
I have to say that was my gut instinct.
Yeah.
I didn't dare say it.
No, and I'm not sure whether I'm going to be castigated for saying it now.
But is there an argument? Is there an argument? You know, intimidation of juries is something that, of course, we've always taken very seriously.
Yeah.
We do know at times it goes on.
Yeah.
Is there an argument in cases like this to get a jury in from another part of the country?
Definitely, 100%. You know, if you look at that case, was there a legitimate excuse? The defendants believed, quite fairly, there was a legitimate excuse. They're perfectly entitled to advance that. Once they advance that, from a legal perspective, the Crown need to prove beyond reasonable doubt that legitimate excuse doesn't exist, which is a very high threshold. And it must be sensible, not to have it just before a judge. I really do believe in the jury system, but get some people from another part of the country, and we're sure, aren't we, that those people are going to be put under pressure.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
that's what should happen in that sort of case.
I've been feeling that for some time.
And of course, that sort of verdict seems to give the green light to other people who are similarly inclined to say, I can do what I like now. And that case, of course, isn't a binding authority. It's Crown Court, it's persuasive. But people are going to look at it and think, why not? I believe I have a legitimate excuse. I think they're going to be very disappointed if that argument's run again.
Yeah, I'm worried about it. Nick, we've left the European Union, for good or bad.
Yeah.
We have, for now, stayed part of the European Convention on Human Rights.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've always thought that when it comes to justice and liberty, we don't have to. We've not got much to learn from the European continent.
I agree.
Is it time now to rethink all of this? Is it time to get us back to proper common law principles? I know that the Human Rights Act and all that's gone with it has been a jamboree for the legal industry.
It's left-wing legislation, isn't it? Am I allowed to say that?
Go on, keep going. I mean, it's saying all the things that I get in terrible trouble for. I'm loving this.
It's left-wing legislation, and look, you know, we've always wanted to rule our own courts, rule our own land without being interfered with. And you know, I voted for Brexit, and one of the reasons why was because I think the Supreme Court should be the ultimate court in this country, and I want to abide by their decisions and not by somebody else's decisions. So yes, I mean, and I think we're eventually going to get there and have sensible legislation in place. By and large, that's presupposing that the government get the right people advising them. And I have to say, you know, there are so many areas that the government, particularly in the area that I practice, and I think, what is going on? Who is advising the government? Where are they making these decisions? Like, you know, we touched upon the highway code. Yeah. You know, who says it's sensible for a pedestrian now to have the power to step out in front of a car at a junction and I've got priority? Or for a cyclist to take the crown of the road when we've got very limited space, this is the most congested city in the world because of cycle lanes. You don't need to use cycle lanes, Mr. Cyclist. Sit in the middle of the road, hold us up, and we're going to sit patiently behind you. You know, the law, that's what they're entitled to do. Okay, they're supposed to move over. It just lacks common sense, doesn't it? And it's a shame. There seems to be a lack of collaborative process.
Despite the problems, though, I mean, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, to introduce a fundamental change to the highway code with most of the country, I didn't know about this till last Saturday. A
third of the country didn't. And what's concerning is the remaining balance, a significant number aren't even interested. They say, I'm not going to look, I'm not interested. And of course, it's so drastic that there's going to be a lot of problems, and a lot of people are going to be coming to court, going to see lawyers saying, I didn't know this. Well, that's your fault. You need, you know, ignorance of the law is no defence.
But Nick, despite the problems, when you look at our legal system, I look at our legal system without your knowledge.
Best in the world.
I look at America. And plea bargaining. Well, you're almost left with no choice but to have to plead guilty. I look at the European system where in Spain they can pick you up for something, leave you in prison for months without placing charge.
You know,
give us something optimistic about our system.
Look, the legal system in our country is in a real mess because of lack of funding. You know, lawyers now doing criminal legal aid work. The amount of work, it works out probably £15, £20 an hour. Okay, so you're now having defendants who are on remand in custody, who are waiting, they're not going to get bail, and they think, I might as well plead guilty. I haven't committed the offence. So we're in a mess here, but it's still the best system in the world, but we do need an injection of cash, and I do believe we do have the best legal system in the world, and at least we have, you know, I once had a case and defending a very wealthy Russian son, okay, and I did the first part, won it, about to do the second part, I'm going to be scanting my details. And I said, look, we've done a deal. We've got rid of all sorts of aspects, plead guilty. We've got an indication of sentence. He said, no. Well, I'm going to go to another lawyer because we're going to bribe the judge. And he wouldn't accept that, actually. That just does not happen in this country.
Well, thank goodness for that.
Thank that.
And keep up the golf. 2-handicap golfer?
Yes, I am, actually.
Very good. Can't be bad. Nick Freeman, thank you for joining us.
Cheers, Nigel. Nice to talk to you.
We have a few short moments left for Farage the Farage. Grace asks me, will you be sticking with a zero alcohol beer next week or getting back to a decent pint? The latter, not the former, I can assure you. One viewer asks, what do you think is behind the drip feed of Boris party information? What is their motive behind it? It's Cummings and vindictiveness is what I think. Nick, what do you think?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Spot on. Absolutely spot on.
He doesn't care what damage he does.
Nope.
Whether he hurts Boris, hurts the Tories.
I mean, this is it's a divorce at the worst of the worst.
It's horrible.
It's very acrimonious.
Absolutely horrible. Last question. What's your favourite cake? Oh, well, one that's provided by Carrie Antoinette, I suppose. Some of you may get that. Coming up next.